The stars were burning. That was what the message said. The stars were burning, and the Volanthi were dying. Captain Sarah Chen stood alone on the observation deck of the UEN Valkyrie. She held a cup of cold coffee in her hands. She had forgotten to drink it 3 hours ago. Now she just held it like it was the only thing keeping her connected to the normal world. The distress signal played again through the ship speakers. It was the 47th time she had listened to it. The voice was not human. It belonged to a species called the Volanthi. They were tall and thin, with silver skin and large dark eyes. Sarah had never met one in person. Most humans had not. The Volanthi lived far away from Earth. They were peaceful. They were kind. They had never fought a war in 3,000 years. Now they were screaming for help. Please, the voice said, in broken universal standard. Anyone who hears this. We are dying. The Kethvori have come. They eat our worlds. They eat our people. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. Please. Someone. Anyone. Help us. The message ended. Then it started again. It had been playing on a loop for 6 days. 6 days of screaming into the void of space. 6 days of waiting for someone to answer. Sarah put down her coffee cup. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of innocent beings were dying, and the galaxy did nothing. The other alien species were too scared. But humanity was different. Sarah's communicator beeped. She pressed the button. Captain Chen, a voice said. Admiral Cole wants to see you in the war room. Sarah took a deep breath. On my way. The war room of Earth Command was deep underground. It was a massive circular chamber filled with holographic displays and serious-faced officers. At the center stood Admiral Marcus Cole. He was 62 years old with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. He had fought in 3 wars. He had won all of them. When he spoke, people listened. When he gave orders, people obeyed. Sarah walked into the room and stood at attention. You wanted to see me, Admiral. Me. See me, Admiral. Admiral Cole did not turn around. He was staring at a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots covered one section of the map. Each red dot was a Volanthi world. Each red dot was now dead. Captain Chen, the Admiral said, do you know why humanity still has warships? Sarah paused. Sir, 300 years ago, we joined the galactic community. We met species who had lived in peace for thousands of years. They asked us why we still built weapons, why we still trained soldiers, why we still prepared for war when there was no war to fight. The Admiral turned to face her. Do you know what we told them? As in. No, sir. We told them that peace is not the absence of enemies. Peace is the ability to destroy your enemies so completely that they never come back. The Admiral smiled. It was not a warm smile. The galaxy thought we were barbarians, primitive apes who could not let go of our violent past. But now look at them. The Kethvori are eating their worlds, and they have nothing. No weapons, no soldiers, no hope. Sarah nodded slowly. And now they are calling for help. Yes, and we are going to answer. The Admiral pressed a button on his console. The map changed. It showed a fleet of human warships, 147 vessels, battle cruisers, destroyers, carriers, and at the front, one ship marked with a special symbol, the Valkyrie. I am giving you command of the vanguard, the Admiral said. You will lead the attack. I will coordinate from the flagship Prometheus. We leave in 12 hours. Sarah stared at the map. She had dreamed of commanding a major operation her whole career, but this was not what she had imagined. This was not a training exercise. This was real war, real death, real consequences. Sir, she said quietly, the Kethvori have over 2,000 ships. We have less than 150. The math does not look good. Admiral Cole laughed. It was a short, hard sound. Captain, let me tell you something about humanity. We have spent our entire existence fighting things bigger than us. Ice ages, plagues, predators, other humans. We learned a long time ago that numbers do not win wars. Will wins wars. Tactics win wars. The absolute refusal to surrender wins wars. He walked closer to her. His eyes were cold and bright. The Kethvori are strong. They are fast. They are hungry. But they have never fought a species that treats war like an art form. They have never fought a species that would rather die than lose. They have never fought humans. Sarah felt something stir in her chest. It was fear. But underneath the fear was something else. Something hot and sharp. Pride. Determination. The same feeling her ancestors had felt when they stood against impossible odds and won. What about the Volanthi? She asked. How many are still alive? We do not know. Maybe millions. Maybe thousands. Maybe none. The Admiral shook his head. But that is not the point. The point is that someone called for help. Someone asked humanity to save them. And we are going to answer that call. Not because it is easy. Not because we are sure to win. But because it is right. 8. Sarah stood straighter. Yes, sir. Good. The Admiral turned back to the map. Go prepare your ship. Brief your crew. Tell them what we are facing. Tell them the odds. And then tell them that we are going anyway. Sarah saluted and walked toward the door. Before she left, she stopped and looked back. Admiral? Yes? What if we fail? What if the Kethvori destroy us all? Admiral Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke without turning around. Then we will die fighting. And the galaxy will remember that when evil came, humanity did not hide. We did not run. We did not close our eyes and hope it would go away. He paused. We grabbed our weapons and we went to war. Because that is who we are. That is who we have always been. Oh, Sarah nodded. She walked out of the war room and headed for her ship. 12 hours later, the 7th Fleet launched into hyperspace. 147 warships. 20,000 soldiers. One mission. The Volanthi had called for backup. Humanity answered. The sky over Volanthi Prime had been gray for 9 days. Gray from smoke. Gray from ash. Gray from the death of everything the Volanthi had built over 3,000 years. Elder Sonath crouched in the ruins of what used to be the Great Temple. Around him, survivors huddled in the darkness. Children cried. Adults prayed. Everyone waited for death. The Kethvori had come like a plague. Their ships were not made of metal. They were alive. Massive organic creatures that moved through space like monsters from ancient nightmares. They did not negotiate. They first. They fifth. They first. They first. They fifth. They did not communicate. They only consumed. Planet after planet fell to their hunger. Now, Volanthi Prime was next. How many ships do they have? Someone whispered. Sonath did not want to answer. But he did anyway. Over 2,000. And more are coming every hour. Silence fell over the group. 2,000 ships. The Volanthi had no weapons. They had built their society on peace, on trust, on the belief that the universe was fundamentally good. That belief had been wrong. Did anyone answer our call? A young female asked. Her name was Tilani. She was barely an adult. She should have been in school. Instead, she was hiding in rubble, waiting to die. Sonath shook his head. We sent the message to every corner of the galaxy. No one answered. The Dralith said they were sorry, but could not help. The Consortium of Free Worlds said they needed to protect their own borders. The Yathani simply did not respond. What about the humans? Sonath paused. The humans. He had heard stories about them. Everyone had. A young species from a small planet called Earth. They were different from other species. Violent. Dangerous. They had somehow survived a world that tried to kill them every day. Extreme temperatures, deadly predators, diseases that could wipe out entire populations. But the strangest thing about humans was that they still built weapons. Even after joining the galactic community, even after 300 years of peace, they maintained armies. They built warships. The rest of the galaxy thought they were crazy. The humans are too far away, Sonath said. Even if they wanted to help, they could never arrive in time. Above them, the sky flashed with light. Another Kethvori bombardment. The ground shook. Dust fell from what remained of the ceiling. Tilani closed her eyes. Then it is over. Sonath wanted to tell her no. He wanted to tell her that help was coming, that everything would be okay. But he could not lie to her. Not now. Not at the end. He opened his mouth to speak, and then the sky split open. It was not like normal hyperspace travel. Normal ships emerged quietly, gently. These ships came through like they were tearing reality apart. One moment, there was empty space. The next moment there was fire and metal and destruction. 147 ships appeared in perfect formation. They were not organic, like Kethvori vessels. They were hard, angular, covered in weapons. Each one was painted black with white markings. What is that? Tilani gasped. Sonath stared at the sky. His translator implant was working overtime, trying to identify the ships. Then, the answer came. Humans, he whispered. Those are human warships. On the bridge of the UEN Valkyrie, Captain Sarah Chen watched her tactical display light up with enemy contacts. 2,147 Kethvori vessels, all of them turning toward the human fleet. Captain, her first officer said. They are changing course. All of them, Sarah nodded. Good. That means they noticed us. She pressed a button on her console. Open a channel to the planet. The communications officer worked quickly. Channel open. Captain, Sarah spoke clearly into the microphone. Valanthi Collective. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Navy. We received your distress call. We are here to help. She paused and looked at the swarm of enemy ships filling her screen. I recommend you find shelter. Things are about to get loud. She closed the channel and turned to her crew. They were young. Most of them had never seen real combat. But their faces were hard. Their eyes were focused. They had trained for this their entire lives. All hands, Sarah announced over the ship speakers. Battle stations. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Alarms rang throughout the ship. Crew members ran to their positions. Weapons, systems powered up. Shields activated. The Valkyrie was ready for war. From the flagship Prometheus, Admiral Cole watched the enemy fleet approach. His tactical officers were calculating firing solutions. His engineers were monitoring power levels. Everything was ready. Admiral, his communications officer said, the Kethvori are not responding to any hails. They do not seem interested in talking. I did not expect them to be. Cole replied. He stood up from his command chair and addressed the entire fleet through the command channel. All ships, this is Admiral Cole. You know why we are here. You know what we are facing. The odds are against us. The enemy is strong, but I want you to remember something. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Humanity did not survive by being weak. We did not become a starfaring species by giving up when things got hard. We are here because a peaceful species called for help. They had no weapons. They had no soldiers. They had nothing but hope. And they hoped that someone in this cold, dark universe would answer their call. On every ship, every crew member listened. Today, we are that answer. Today, We show the galaxy what it means to be human. Today, we fight. Admiral Cole sat back down. He looked at his tactical display. The HFY were almost in range. All ships, he ordered, weapons free. The Valkyrie fired first. A massive barrage of missiles launched from her forward tubes. They streaked across the void of space, leaving trails of white fire behind them. Then, the other ships fired. Then the carriers launched their fighters. Then the battle cruisers unleashed their main cannons. The space between the two fleets filled with light. On Volanthi Prime, the survivors watched from their hiding places. They had never seen anything like this. The humans were not running. They were not trying to negotiate. They were attacking. Elder Sonath felt tears running down his face. He did not know if they were tears of hope or tears of fear. They came, Tilani whispered. They actually came. Sonath nodded. He could not speak. He could only watch as the human fleet charged straight into the heart of the HFY swarm. The Battle of Volanthi Prime had begun. The HFY had conquered 37 species. They had destroyed hundreds of worlds. They had consumed billions of lives. In all that time, no one had ever truly fought back. Until now. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the center of her bridge as the Valkyrie tore through the enemy formation. Around her, officers shouted reports and warnings. Alarms blared. The ship shook with each impact, but Sarah remained calm. She had trained for this moment her entire life. Enemy cluster, at bearing 047, her tactical officer called out. 12 ships. Target the lead vessel, Sarah ordered. Full missile spread. Fire. The Valkyrie responded instantly. 24 missiles launched from her tubes. They flew in a tight formation, weaving through enemy fire, adjusting their course with machine precision. Then they hit their target. The HFY ship exploded in a ball of blue and orange fire. Target destroyed, the tactical officer reported. Next target, Sarah said. Do not stop. Do not slow down. Keep firing. This was how humans fought. Not with caution, not with restraint, with overwhelming, unstoppable force. Human weapons were not designed to wound enemies. They were designed to destroy them completely. Human tactics were not designed to achieve slow victory. They were designed to crush opposition so fast that the enemy could not respond. The other species in the galaxy had always thought this was wasteful, primitive, unnecessary. But the Volanthi had no weapons at all. And now, their worlds were burning. The humans had weapons beyond counting, and they were winning. On the flagship Prometheus, Admiral Marcus Cole watched the battle unfold on his holographic display. The human fleet had broken into 5 attack groups. Each group was targeting a different section of the HFY swarm. Each group was advancing, pushing deeper into enemy territory. Admiral, his tactical commander said, the enemy is trying to regroup. They are pulling back to form a defensive line. Cole nodded. Do not let them. Order all groups to increase speed. Press the attack. Sir, if we push too hard, we might overextend. That is exactly what I want. Cole leaned forward in his chair. The HFY fight on instinct. They attack when they sense weakness. They retreat when they sense strength. If we show them no mercy, if we give them no room to breathe, they will panic. The tactical commander nodded and relayed the orders. The human fleet accelerated. Ships that should have been holding back charged forward. Captains who should have been careful became aggressive. The HFY had never faced anything like this. Every other species they had attacked had tried to defend, tried to hold the line, tried to survive. The humans were not trying to survive. They were trying to win. Captain Chen felt the Valkyrie shudder as enemy fire struck the hull. Warning lights flashed across her console. Damage report, she demanded. Hull breach on Deck 7, her engineer reported. Sealing now. No casualties. Shields? Down to 60%. Sarah made a quick calculation in her head. They could take more punishment. They could keep fighting. Maintain course. Target the next ship. Her first officer moved closer to her. His name was Lieutenant Commander David Park. He had served with Sarah for 3 years. He knew her better than anyone on the ship. "Captain," he said quietly, "we are taking heavy fire. Should we pull back and regroup?" Sarah looked at him. "No, but Captain, David." Sarah's voice was firm but not angry. "Look at the tactical display." "What do you see?" Park looked. The display showed the entire battle. Human ships were marked in blue. Kethvori ships were marked in red. There were far more red dots than blue ones. But the blue dots were moving forward. The red dots were scattering. "They are running," Park said slowly. "They are confused," Sarah corrected. "They do not understand what is happening. Every other species they attacked tried to survive. We are trying to kill them. That is a different thing entirely." She turned back to her console. "The moment we slow down, the moment we show hesitation, they will realize we can be beaten. They will regroup. They will adapt. We cannot let that happen." Quote. Park nodded. He understood now. "Aye, Captain." The battle continued for 6 more hours. 6 hours of constant fighting. 6 hours of explosions, and death and chaos. The human fleet lost 14 ships. The Kethvori lost 312. On Volanthi Prime, the survivors watched in amazement. They had expected the humans to be destroyed. They had expected another failure, another disappointment. Instead, they watched the Kethvori swarm being torn apart. Elder Sanath could not understand what he was seeing. "How is this possible?" he asked. "They are outnumbered, 15 to 1. A young Volanthi named Korath had been studying humans for years. He was one of the few who had paid attention to the strange species from Earth. It is their history," he explained. "Humans have been fighting wars since before they had written language. They have spent thousands of years developing weapons and tactics. While we were building temples and libraries, they were building better ways to kill each other." "That is horrible," Tilani said. "Yes," Korath agreed. "But right now, it is saving our lives." On the Prometheus, Admiral Cole received a report that made him smile. The Kethvori had sent a signal into deep space. They were calling for reinforcements. "Admiral," his communications officer said nervously, "they are calling for more ships. If reinforcements arrive, then we will fight them too." Cole stood up and walked to the main display. "I want the Kethvori to call for help. I want every one of their ships in this sector to come here. I want them all in one place." "Sir, we did not come here to win a small battle, Commander. We came here to send a message." Cole's eyes were cold. "The message is simple. If you attack species under human protection, we will not stop until every single one of you is dead." The commander swallowed. "Understood, sir." Cole returned to his chair. The battle was going well. Better than expected. But he knew the hardest part was still coming. The Kethvori would send reinforcements. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. And when they arrived, the real test would begin. He opened a private channel to the Valkyrie. "Captain Chen." Sarah's voice came back immediately. "Yes. Admiral." "Irelu, Irelu, Irelu. Excellent work out there. Your ship is performing beyond expectations. Thank you, sir. Do not thank me yet." Cole paused. "The enemy is calling for reinforcements. Things are going to get much worse before they get better." There was a moment of silence. Then Sarah spoke. Cole smiled. "I know you will." Cole out. He closed the channel and looked at the battle raging outside his window. The stars were filled with fire and death and destruction. It was beautiful in a terrible way. The humans were winning. But the war was just beginning. 3 days. For 3 days, the human fleet held the line. For 3 days, they fought without rest, without mercy, without stopping. And for 3 days, more Kethvori ships kept coming. Captain Sarah Chen had not slept in 47 hours. Her eyes burned. Her muscles ached. Her hands trembled slightly when she reached for her coffee cup. But she did not leave the bridge. She could not. Her crew needed her. The fleet needed her. The millions of Valanthi survivors hiding on the planet below needed her. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Park said softly, "You need to rest." Sarah shook her head. "I will rest when this is over." "Captain?" "David." Sarah turned to look at him. Her face was pale and exhausted. "Look at the tactical display. Tell me what you see." "Explain." Park looked. The display showed the current state of the battle. The human fleet had been reduced from 147 ships to 104. 43 ships destroyed, over 8,000 crew members dead. And still, the Kethvori kept coming. "More reinforcements," Park said grimly. "Another wave just arrived." "How many?" 400 ships. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. 400 more ships, added to the thousands already in the system. The odds were getting worse by the hour, but they could not stop. They could not retreat. If they left now, the Valanthi would die. "Maintain position," Sarah ordered. "Continue firing." On the Prometheus, Admiral Cole stood in front of his tactical display. His face showed no emotion, but inside, he was worried. The battle was taking longer than expected. The losses were higher than planned. His officers were starting to doubt. "Admiral," his executive officer said, "we have lost 43 ships. Our ammunition is running low. Our crews are exhausted. Perhaps we should consider..." "Consider what?" Cole's voice was sharp. "Retreat? Surrender? Leave the Valanthi to die?" The executive officer hesitated. "Sir, we have done more than anyone else would have done. We have proven our point. The galaxy knows that humanity answered the call. There is no shame in withdrawing now." Cole turned to face him. His eyes were hard. "Commander, do you know what happens if we leave? The Kethvori will finish destroying Valanthi Prime. Then they will move on to the next system, then the next. And every species in this galaxy will learn that calling for human help is pointless. That we show up, fight for a while, and then leave when things get too hard." He stepped closer to the commander. "That is not who we are. That is not who I am. We came here to save these people, and we will save them or die trying." The commander nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." Cole turned back to his display. He studied the enemy formations. Thousands of ships. Too many to fight directly. But there was a pattern. The Kethvori were not acting independently. They were coordinated, organized, which meant something was controlling them. "Show me the enemy flagship," Cole ordered. The display zoomed in on a massive ship at the center of the Kethvori swarm. It was 5 kilometers long, organic, pulsing with strange lights. It was the Hive Queen's vessel, the brain of the swarm. "If we destroy that ship," Cole said quietly, "the swarm will fall apart." His tactical officer shook his head. "Sir, that ship is surrounded by hundreds of escorts. No ship could get through that defense. It would be suicide." Cole nodded slowly. He knew that. He had known it from the beginning. But sometimes, suicide was the only option left. He opened a channel to the Valkyrie. "Captain Chen," Sarah answered immediately. Her voice was tired but strong. "Yes, Admiral. I am looking at the enemy flagship, the Hive Queen's ship. I see it too, sir. If we destroy it, the swarm will break. The Kethvori cannot function without their queen." There was a pause. Sarah understood what he was saying. "Admiral, the defenses around that ship are impossible to penetrate. Any attack would be suicide." "Yes, I know." Cole took a deep breath. "I am not ordering you to do this, Captain. I am asking, will you lead the attack?" Silence stretched across the channel. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Sarah looked at her crew. They had heard the conversation. They knew what was being asked. They knew the odds. Lieutenant Commander Park met her eyes. He nodded slowly. Her tactical officer nodded. Her engineer nodded. One by one, every officer on the bridge nodded. Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them away. Admiral Cole. The Valkyrie will lead the attack. We will get you your kill. Thank you, Captain. Cole's voice was rough. It has been an honor serving with you. The honor is mine, sir. Chen out. She closed the channel and turned to her crew. You heard the Admiral. We are going in. I want all weapons charged, all shields to maximum. Plot a course straight through the enemy formation to the Hive Queen's ship. Course plotted, her navigation officer said. Engineering. I need everything this ship has. Squeeze every bit of power from the reactors. Aye, Captain. Sarah sat down in her command chair. She gripped the armrests tightly. Her hands were not trembling anymore. She was beyond fear, beyond exhaustion. She had reached a place of perfect clarity. All hands. She announced over the ship speakers. This is the captain. We are about to begin an attack that will likely end in our deaths. I will not lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. But if we succeed, we will save millions of innocent lives. We will show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. We will prove that when someone calls for help, we answer. She paused. I am proud of every single one of you. It has been my greatest honor to serve as your captain. Now let us show these monsters what the Valkyrie can do. The ship lurched forward. Maximum speed. Straight toward the enemy flagship. On the Prometheus, Admiral Cole watched the Valkyrie charge into the heart of the Kethvori swarm. Enemy ships closed in from all sides. Fire poured into the human vessel. But the Valkyrie did not slow down, did not turn. Come on. The Valkyrie's shields failed at the halfway point. Her hull began to crack. Fires broke out on multiple decks. Crew members died at their stations. But the ship kept moving, kept firing, kept fighting. Captain Sarah Chen gripped her armrests as the bridge exploded around her. Warning alarms screamed. Smoke filled the air. Through the chaos, she could see the Hive Queen's ship growing larger on her screen. Distance to target, she shouted. 200 kilometers, Park yelled back. 150. 100. All forward weapons. Everything we have. Fire. The Valkyrie unleashed her final attack. The Valkyrie emptied her magazines. Every missile. Every torpedo. Every weapon she had left. They flew across the gap between the ships, like a wall of fire and death. Nuclear warheads, plasma charges, kinetic impactors designed to punch through the thickest armor. The Hive Queen's ship tried to evade. It was too slow, too large, too confident. The first missile struck its outer shell. Then the second wave hit. Then the third. Captain Sarah Chen watched through a cracked view screen as the enemy flagship began to break apart. Orange light poured from wounds in its organic hull. It twisted and screamed. And then, it exploded. The shockwave hit the Valkyrie like a hammer. Sarah was thrown from her chair. She hit the deck hard. Pain shot through her shoulder. Around her, sparks flew from damaged consoles. The lights flickered. The ship groaned. Then silence. Sarah pushed herself up slowly. Her shoulder was broken. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. But she was alive. She looked around the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Park was getting to his feet. Other officers were moving, wounded, hurt, but alive. Damage report, Sarah said. Her voice was rough. Extensive hull damage, her engineer reported weakly. We have lost main propulsion. Shields are gone. Weapons are offline. Life support is functioning on backup power. He looked up at her. Captain, this ship is finished. Sarah nodded. She had known that from the moment they began their attack. What about the enemy? Park limped to a still-functioning console. He stared at the readings. Then he started to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had survived the impossible. "They are running," he said. "The HFY are running." Sarah pulled herself to her feet and looked at the view screen. He was right. Without their queen, the HFY swarm had fallen into chaos. Ships that had fought with perfect coordination were now crashing into each other, fleeing in random directions. Some were even attacking their own vessels. The hive mind was broken. The enemy was defeated. On the Prometheus, Admiral Marcus Cole watched the HFY swarm collapse. His officers were cheering, embracing each other. Some were crying with relief. The impossible had happened. They had won. But Cole did not celebrate. His eyes were fixed on one ship, the Valkyrie. She was drifting in space, dead in the water. No power, no movement. "Get me a channel to the Valkyrie," Cole ordered. His communications officer worked quickly. "Channel open, sir." "Captain Chen." "Sarah, can you hear me?" Static. Then a weak voice came through. "Admiral, this is Chen. We are alive." Barely. Cole let out a breath he did not know he was holding. "The enemy is retreating. The swarm is broken. You did it." There was a pause. When Sarah spoke again, her voice was filled with exhaustion and something else. Something that might have been pride. "We all did it, sir." "Yes. We did." Cole turned to his crew. "Send rescue shuttles to the Valkyrie immediately. Get their wounded to our medical bays." That ship and her crew saved us all. On Volanthi Prime, the survivors emerged from their hiding places. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. No enemy ships. No bombardments. No death falling from above. Elder Sonath stood in the ruins of the great temple and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human warships were chasing the last of the HFY out of the system. Somewhere out there, Captain Sarah Chen was being carried to a medical shuttle. Somewhere out there, Admiral Marcus Cole was already planning how to make sure the HFY never threatened anyone again. Tilani walked up beside him. "Is it over?" she asked. Sonath nodded slowly. "Yes, it is over. They came. The humans actually came." "Yes." Sonath felt tears on his face again. This time, they were tears of joy. They came. The days that followed were filled with rescue operations and medical treatment. The human fleet had suffered heavy losses. 43 ships destroyed. Over 12,000 crew members dead. The Valkyrie had lost 109 of her crew, including 32 who died during the final attack. But they had saved millions. The Volanthi population had been reduced, but they would survive. They would rebuild. They would remember. And rebuild. They would rebuild. They would rebuild. They would rebuild. They would rebuild. 1 week after the battle, a ceremony was held on Volanthi Prime. The surviving members of the human fleet stood in formation. Admiral Cole stood at the front. Captain Sarah Chen stood beside him, her arm in a sling, her face still marked with healing cuts. Elder Sonath approached them. Behind him, thousands of Volanthi had gathered to watch. Admiral Cole, Captain Chen. Sonath's voice was steady, but filled with emotion. "The Volanthi Collective has no words to express our gratitude. You came when no one else would. You fought when no one else could. You sacrificed your lives for people you had never met." He paused. Tears were flowing freely down his silver face. "We will never forget. Your fallen will be honored on this world forever. Their names will be carved into the stones of our temples. Their stories will be taught to our children, and whenever someone asks why, we will tell them the truth. Humanity came because we asked. That is the only reason they needed." Admiral Cole stepped forward. "Elder Sonath, we did not come here for glory or gratitude. We came because it was the right thing to do. When someone calls for help, you answer. That is what it means to be human." Sonath nodded. "Then let the galaxy know this. The Volanthi will stand with humanity forever. Your friends are our friends. Your enemies are our enemies. You saved us. We will never forget. A year later, a monument was built on Volanthi Prime. It stood at the center of the rebuilt capital city. It was a statue of a human warship, carved from white stone, forever pointing toward the stars. The inscription at its base read, "They came when we called. They stayed until it was done." Admiral Marcus Cole retired 3 years after the battle. He spent his remaining days writing his memoirs and teaching young officers the lessons he had learned. He died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 79. Captain Sarah Chen took command of the rebuilt Valkyrie II. She continued to serve for another 20 years, becoming one of the most decorated officers in human history. When she finally retired, she returned to Volanthi Prime. She spent her last years there, surrounded by the people she had saved. The Kethvori never returned. Some said they had been destroyed completely. Others said they had simply learned to fear humanity. Either way, no species ever threatened the Volanthi again. And across the galaxy, a lesson was learned. A lesson that would never be forgotten. When you call for backup, and humanity answers, they do not stop until the job is done. They do not retreat. They do not surrender. They fight until they win, or until they die. Because that is who they are. That is who they have always been.